everyone, it's Spencer here, and before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to just highlight a couple of things that are going on with Link Whisper. Link Whisper is a new WordPress plugin that I launched a few months ago, actually at the end of July of 2019, and over the period of time, we've received a lot of really positive feedback. People are enjoying the features that allow them to build internal links much faster, much easier. As you're writing a blog post, there's link suggestions that are automatically created, and it's easy as checking a few boxes to add those internal links. So it saves you a ton of time. Perhaps an even bigger feature is that it allows you to add inbound internal links to a post that you've just written. So if you have a post that doesn't have any links pointing to it, you can very quickly get suggestions and add 5 or 10 internal links pointing to that particular post. But one feature that we just came out with is the ability to do a keyword search for those inbound internal links. So if you wrote an article on Canva review, for example, which I did for nichepursuits.com just recently, I could do a keyword search for the term Canva, and Link Whisper will pull up all of the places that I've mentioned Canva, all the articles that mention the word Canva on Niche Pursuits, and then as easy as just checking a box, I can add an internal link to that Canva review article from a relevant, keyword-rich internal link from another post, saving me tons of time that I might have had to do to Google which articles on my site mention the keyword, going in and editing, etc. Overall, I just wanted to tell you that I'm really excited about the progress we've made on Link Whisper. I have tons of new feature ideas that I plan on coming out with, but it's been very well received, and I hope that you'll consider checking it out and saving yourself some time if you're into that sort of thing, building internal links on your website. And if you are, you can go check it out at linkwhisper.com. Again, that's linkwhisper.com. Thanks for listening in, and we'll jump into today's episode. Hey everyone, it's Spencer Hawes here with nichepursuits.com, and welcome back to another episode of the Niche Pursuits podcast. Excuse my voice, I'm getting over just a small cold here, but I'm still very excited, feeling good about having Jaryd Kraus on as a guest on today's episode. Jaryd Kraus has a website over at buyingonlinebusinesses.com. And as the domain says, you can probably guess what he does in his business and what his website's all about. It's about buying businesses. So Jaryd has a really interesting story. He started out actually as a plumber, and he was making good money as a plumber, but as you can imagine, he decided, well, he didn't enjoy the work all that much. It's manual labor. It's not easy. And so he was looking for something a little more passive, something that would allow him to travel a bit more. And well, he found that eventually through buying websites. And so over the years, he's made 3 different acquisitions. And his first couple of acquisitions went so well that it allowed him to quit his job, and he's now been doing this full time. So Jaryd and I get into a really interesting discussion about how he's built his portfolio, why he thinks buying websites is better than building from scratch. But we also talk about the best places to go buy an online business, what size of deal is the ideal size for certain people. And then also we talk about how to assess risk for potential deals, what are the red flags that people should be looking for, etc. So it's a great discussion about buying online businesses. And so I hope you enjoy the interview with Jaryd here. And if you want to follow along or get in touch with him, you can go to buyingonlinebusinesses.com. With that, I hope you enjoy the interview. Hey, Jaryd, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Hey, Spencer. Thanks so much for having me on. And it's great to finally connect.
Yeah, definitely. It is very good to have you on the podcast. You know, we've sort of followed in similar circles. We were previous to recording, we're talking about Rhodium Weekend and Doug over at Niche Site Project. And I know we've got other mutual connections as well. But we've really never connected on a call here. So it's great to have you be able to hear your story.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
So to give people an idea of, what your background is, where you came from, what were you doing previous to ever building any online businesses?
I was a plumber. So I was at school and I realized that, all right, I tried to do advanced maths and I just got kicked out because I was not very good. And then I realized, all right, I'm not going to be an accountant or have this office type job, which is quite different to what I do now. But yeah, I just realized, all right, I want to make some good money. Over in Australia at the time, when I left school, or when I was leaving school, plumbers and electricians were the highest paid and were getting really good wages. And I started working as a plumber, doing my apprenticeship whilst I was still at school. So I'd work 2 days a week, a Tuesday and a Friday, and then I'd go to school on 3 days, and then eventually came out, and that took some time off my apprenticeship, and that just led me into being a plumber, and grew up through that into supervisory roles and running bigger jobs and hospitals and shopping centers and stuff like that.
So it sounds like you were doing just fine as a plumber. We can talk about whether or not that's the most exciting work, right? But what made you decide to, start an online venture?
Yeah, so it was, the money's really good. And this is the paradox for people in Australia who do have decent jobs. And I guess the same in America is that it's hard to kind of leave unless you have a really big motivation to get out of the industry or get out of your job. And my motivation was, yes, I was making some good money, but I was working like ridiculous hours and it was physical labor. And I was also driving an hour to and from work, sometimes an hour and a half. So spending like 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, 18 hours in the car. I found myself like hating it. And then I'd run away. I'd get to a point after a year and just go, all right, I'm young. I've saved up some cash. I just want to go travel and enjoy my life. And then through traveling, that really led me to go, well, I don't want to go back to plumbing. And I literally at one stage, I found myself in Egypt, and I was doing my dive master to become a dive master. And I realized, like, all right, I need to have a goal, and that was to travel the world and make money. So I just literally jumped on Google, like I guess so many people have done, and typed in how to travel the world and make money online. And that's what led me to this space.
Nice. So what did you find? And from that first Google search, how long did it take you to actually build some real income online?
I found that people were travel blogging, and I thought, all right, this is it. This is my ticket out of here. So I started travel blogging, much to what a lot of people mention, how hard it was to make money from it. Just as it grew, travel blogging, it just, the income got distributed between so many people, and I didn't really make a whole lot of money. I think I started earning money after like an 8-month period or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I did start earning small amounts of like affiliate commission and stuff in the first year,
right?
But it never really went to a stage where I could live off it and travel around the world at all.
Right. So the first attempt at travel blogging, you probably learned a ton. I think we probably all learn a lot with our first business, our first website, but it wasn't a massive success. So maybe you can bring us up to speed to where you're at now. Like, how did you go from, you tried building this travel blog online, but now you're clearly not to, reveal the ending to everybody, but, you're no longer a plumber, and you've done some successful things online.
Yeah. So like, long story short is I went through the stage of realizing that 90% of startups fail, and it is quite hard. There's a lot of work to get to that point where the income's coming in quite well. And it's either you do a lot of failures to get to a point where you learn a lot from them, and then you strike gold with one of your startups,
mm-hmm.
or just try and cut that out, which is what I did. And I found this website called Flipper and thought, all right, cool, this is great. And then I found like proper brokerage websites, and I started buying sites. So I bought one and then another and replaced my income, and then I kept buying them and went off traveling, and I owned multiple sites and was traveling and actually not seeing my bank account get drained, which was quite cool. And from doing so, a lot of people just started reaching out and said, hey, Jaryd, you need to kind of teach me this stuff. I want to get in and buy some sites and stuff. And that's where I segued into teaching people. And then, as you see now, what I have is I've got a community of people that I work with that come in and teach them to buy sites safely and without risk, and make sure they can grow them as well, to scale them and either flip them or hold on to them for something that can be semi-passive.
Perfect. So what year was it that you bought your first site?
I bought my first site in 2014.
Okay.
So what's that? That's like
5 years, 6 years ago.
6 years ago, yeah.
And it sounds like that went decent. At least it went well enough for you to buy another site. Were you just using all your own money from savings to do that?
Yeah, I had some money. I'd started saving from quite a young age, and I had some money that I had in the stock market, and it just wasn't going great after the 08, 07 sort of crash stuff. Mm-hmm. So I took it out, and then I went, all right, let's look at this. It's going to give a better return. So I started putting some money into that. So I've always used cash for my sites. And yeah, the first one, it built up a bit of income. I was still working as well. So I was saving a lot of my money through work and had that other income stream. And then I bought another one, and I had 2 sites whilst I was still running I was doing an expansion of a shopping center as a plumber. So I had 3 income streams at one stage.
Yeah. What size of acquisitions were the first couple of sites you did?
So the first one was like 15,000. Mm-hmm. And then the second one was like about 3 times that. And then it just kept going from there.
Awesome.
So smaller ones.
Yeah.
To start off with.
About how many acquisitions have you done to date?
I bought 3 sites and built a couple of other ones as well.
Okay. So you still have the original 3 sites, or have you sold? Or
no, I've got 2 of them, and I don't have one of them. And I may be selling one, or if not both of them. In 2020, I'm expanding into buying more businesses with other investors and stuff like that as well. So there's going to be a cool little venture that will be coming and getting released in 2020.
Awesome. So just to give a sort of big picture portfolio look, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, at this point you've acquired 3 sites that you're growing. And did you say you have 2 sites that you built from scratch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you have, of course, the buyingonlinebusinesses.com brand. And so that's kind of the overall portfolio of businesses that you're working on and managing right now.
Yeah.
Are you willing to share any sort of success numbers from any of those websites to give us an idea of how well your businesses are doing?
Yeah. So there's I don't really talk like income as in per month, dollar amounts and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I did get quite lucky with the second business I bought. It was in a like men's apparel, and we're doing tailor-made clothes. And when I first bought it, I didn't realize like they had gone from a transition to offline to purely online. And I had a lot of success when I first bought it. This was in 2015 that I bought this one, or mid 2015. I started scaling it, and just by doing a lot of content and changing a few things, that I achieved a bit of luck where they already had existing customers come on board and purchase. So like a lot of the customers are returning customers just due to the quality. So I achieved a 100% return in 7 months on that site. And I was just like, well, this is ridiculous. I need to just put all my chips in. And I know now that was it's non-typical, right? So for everybody listening, it's pretty amazing results, and a lot of it does come from luck, a little bit of work, of course, but that's not something that I'm going to be banking on trying to achieve from buying sites in the future. And I say that to my clients as well, is like, yes, I've achieved that, which is great, although that's very non-typical.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So
as you know as well, buying sites yourself.
Yeah, you shouldn't expect to double your money in 7 months every time. But that is the attractiveness of this business, is that is possible.
Yeah. And the multiples are a bit lower as well, especially from 2013, 2014, 2015. After that, that's where multiples really started ramping up a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So at that stage, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people that you probably know as well, that had got into this even earlier than me, and just the multiples that they were paying is crazy, like 3-month, 4-month, 6-month multiples.
Right.
Crazy.
Yep. Things have definitely changed a little bit over the years. I think we're seeing the market mature a little bit, going from, extremely low multiples to almost more standardized. I mean, there's certainly still deals to be made out there, but if you look at the brokers that are out there, the multiples tend to stay within a certain range for the most part now.
Yeah. There's the industry report that Empire Flippers do that has a pretty good scale of the different multiples for different business models, which is quite good. And I think it's a good resource for a lot of people, because it helps buyers know that, all right, this is what I should be kind of aiming for to purchase something at, rather than going hardcore on the bargaining. Like, this isn't, an undeveloped country where we should be bargaining for these deals.
Right. So first of all, congrats again. I mean, being able to quit your job and being able to travel. Are you doing a lot of traveling, or do you mostly sort of stay home in Australia?
Yeah, thanks. I think, just to come back to the being able to quit my job, I still feel like that's one of the biggest achievements I'll ever achieve. Like, it's a big goal for so many people. And yeah, I mean, it is. I still look back at that and like, that's an amazing achievement for anybody to do. Even though that there's going to be bigger things that'll come, but I still already have. It depends on people's opinions of that, but I still think that's a really cool thing, and it's so achievable now for especially a lot of your audience that are listening. And I think that's quite a cool thing. As for travel, I really use that travel as a tool, as an escape mechanism to run away from my life of plumbing. And, I got mixed up in partying a lot as well. So I kind of it was a great tool to remove myself from that. So now I do travel with my partner, but it's definitely not the type of traveling that I was doing on a shoestring budget backpacking stuff. And
Right.
I do spend most of my time in Australia because, like, I'm just loving, like, I actually really love work, and I live in a great spot where I can surf every morning. So I don't feel the need to run around and tick things off the list in the travel sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've kind of figured out a career path or a business that's working for you. You enjoy, doing what you're doing. And so I think that's great. So to come back to buying businesses, so sort of the age old question is, why is buying an online business better than starting one from scratch?
And so that's a great question. And this is completely my opinion, and everybody else is going to have their own opinion. I just feel that the best way, there's two parts to this. The best way to learn about business is to be in business. And when you start, there's a lot of loops that you've got to jump through, and a lot of heartache and a lot of failures that you need to learn from. When you can learn a lot, like, they can be skipped in purely if you just want to have success to make money, they can be skipped, and you can go to a whole new set of lessons and problems to solve as a business already is earning money, and you can skip that whole startup failure rate. And that's the second part to it, is that 90% of all startups fail, and it's really, really hard. Like, I'm sure, I know that you've started building businesses, and it's like, when you first start, it's quite hard to really understand, all right, that doesn't work. And I put a lot of time into that and a lot of money into that. And you can always earn more money, but you're not going to earn more time.
Right.
And that's, we're never going to get that back. And there's so much that we need to go through to get to a point where it's ticking over, and it can be, even somewhat passive, or even if we're working 40 hours a week for it, and it's making an income, there's a lot of work for it to get to that stage. Whereas when you buy a business, you can have that as soon as you hand over your cash, and it's already a proven system. It's already making money. It's already got all the data there. So that's why I love it. And that's why so many of my clients love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the reality is that building an online business can be great and it can work, but it does. It takes a long time. It might be a year or 2 years or never before, your business is making any significant amount of money. And so there's a lot of question marks surrounding it. If it works, and that's a big if, sure, you could start it for a lot cheaper, right? Like, maybe you could put in, pick a number, $10,000 or $20,000, right? If you call that your investment, and potentially you could, build a site that's making $2,000 or $3,000 or more $1,000 a month, if you sort of hit a home run and everything goes really well.
Well, I think it's also that once you start to learn how to build these businesses as well, then you definitely have more chance of success because you've learned so much more.
Right.
For me, I feel that I would have struggled and ran around in circles for many more years if I hadn't have started buying sites and never really learnt the whole house to start one properly. I think what I was quite lucky to do is buy sites and realize how the successful ones are built by owning them and then being able to build them myself personally because I know what it should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And the same as you, I know that you've started things, and as you keep going and you start more and more, you know what needs to go in to building something that's going to be solid and going to work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually that reminds me to kind of follow up on the couple of sites you built. How have those gone? I mean, once you've sort of owned a few sites that you purchased, have they been successful, the ones that you built yourself?
No, not really. I definitely struggled with them. And this is before I started buying them as well. So I built my blog, a travel blog, and that, it made some money. It wasn't really good. I got a lot of exposure to the online space through that. It was definitely one of the best things that I did do because it taught me so much, like you said. And then off the back of that, I built a business that was in drop shipping. So I came home from one of my trips and I just called up a bunch of suppliers over a month and created this drop shipping business. Little did I know that I needed to get traffic to the site and be good at digital marketing to get people to actually purchase.
Right.
And I didn't know anything about SEO. I didn't know anything about content creation except for writing a few blog posts. I knew a little bit of, a few things, but nothing to get something like a drop shipping business to scale. I didn't even know how to do a Facebook ad or a Google ad at that time.
Right.
And that's all stuff that I learnt through businesses that I had bought and got quite good at digital marketing, got quite good at sales, understood SEO a lot better. And then from building, something in a niche that has momentum already and then adding my skills into that, then I've had more success, especially with like buying online businesses. That site is a site that I have built and a business that I have built from the ground up, and it's had great success, but only because of all the things that I learned from businesses I've owned.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So for people that are interested in maybe going out and buying a site, where do you think the best places are to go buy an online business? I mean, should people be going to Flippa, the Empire Flippers of the world? Are you finding private deals? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it really depends on. I mean, it's quite hard to find a private deal when you first come to this space, unless you tap into a community where there's private deals getting thrown around. It really depends on what people are wanting to spend and how quickly they want to ramp things up as well. Personally, I think it's very not the greatest place to go to Flippa or Exchange Marketplace when you're first buying sites, because there is a lot of junky listings on there, and I've had Blake Hutchison, who's the CEO of Flippa, he's coming on a summit that I'm hosting, and I've had him on the podcast, and he agrees, there's a lot of things that need to be filtered through. And there's so many stories that you would have seen as well, Spencer, especially on these marketplaces where people don't know a whole lot and they just get taken advantage of. For example, even just yesterday, I had a call with one of my clients. He's looking at a site from Flippa. It's like, do you even see these things that I'm seeing? And it was his first site that he's doing due diligence on. He didn't see it at all. But I just, if people are going to go away and do this by themselves, I just err a lot of caution, because you like just at least learn as much as you can through due diligence before you go to any of those. People forget that how good brokers actually are. I feel like brokers definitely vet businesses, and this is why I love brokers, is because they have their brand at heart. Like they have their, they have a brand. They have, their best interest at heart, and that means them having their best interest at heart means that they should have the purchasers and the sellers' best interest at heart, because they don't want to destroy their brand. They don't want to have bad case studies. They don't want to have, flack come back from bad things that happen.
Right.
And unfortunately, sometimes there are people that buy businesses that are doing perfectly fine and run them down the drain just because it may be their first purchase and they don't know, that may not have the skills to run that particular type of business model. But to answer your question, I believe definitely going to brokers as your first port of call for the first business you may buy is the best way to go. And the hard thing that I see is there's people that want to jump into this and they just want to dip their toe in the water in this buying online business space. And as it grows, bigger money's coming into the market, making the sites a bit more expensive than most people that come to the market. And that's why I love there's some ventures that are opening up, especially like yours, what you're doing with Motion Invest and John and Kelly, is that
right.
It's a massive market there where people want to buy something sub 50K and they want it to be a decent asset without having to deal with the likes of Flipper and Exchange Marketplace, where they could get taken advantage of quite easy because they're green in the space. So I think, what you're opening up with Motion Invest is awesome. And then where people want to segue into bigger deals and they can go into bigger brokers that list things up to the 20 mil.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously I agree. I mean, that's exactly what John and I saw with Motion Invest, is just there's this gap in the marketplace. The brokers want to do bigger and bigger deals, even Empire Flippers, right? I mean, they started in the smaller space, but they're certainly scaling up, right? They're able to, they've built a great business, and they make more money on the 7-figure deals, right? And so kudos to them for being able to do that. But it does kind of leave a void a little bit in the marketplace in terms of these smaller size sites, right? Like 50,000 or less, or even 100,000 or less, can be hard to find on other brokers. And so
they sell so quick as well,
they do. Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I mean, I was speaking to Alex the other day, and these $70,000 businesses are selling within seconds, and it makes sense for Empire Flippers to start selling bigger businesses because their team's expanding so much, and it's costing them more and more money to sell these smaller listings. But when you have an approach like you guys, where you can be really streamlined, you guys can do well, and the people who buy them can do well as well. And it's like, as you said, there's a massive void there, and I love where you're not just building a business, right? You're solving a problem, and that's why you guys are going to do well. And I love that there's that available for people who are jumping into the space, because a lot of my clients go, "Hey, Jaryd, I want to buy a site, and this is how much money I've got." And I say, well, I'm glad that you've come to me, because if you're going to go away and spend that money on Flipper and Exchange Marketplace and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get taken advantage of. But where else is there that they can buy something that's going to be decent from reputable people? And I'm glad that you've got that happening, because it means people can start off with $10,000 like I had, or, a little bit more or whatever, and then slowly start. And it means this gives more people the possibility to start something that's eventually, in a few years' time, going to allow them to replace their income. And that's my ethos. That's my, why I actually started what I'm doing, is that I want to make sure other people can get out of something that they don't like, and the main goal is to spend time with the people they love, right? Like friends and family, and people have kids and stuff like that. That's why I got into it. And I think that you're just opening up that space or filling in that void where those people can start by dipping their toe in the water. And I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, like you've already expressed, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have a lot of experience in, vetting websites and, noticing what the risks are. They just see a listing on Flippa, like you said, and they say, hey, this looks like a great deal, right? They may miss some things just because they haven't been in the industry for very long. And so anyways, that's what we're trying to do at Motion Invest is we vet all these deals. Obviously, we own them already. We believe that they're good businesses. And so that's why we're willing to do that. And so to move on past that, I do want to hear some of your thoughts on how you assess risk. And when you're looking at potential deals, what are red flags that you're kind of looking for when you're trying to buy a site?
Yeah. I want to let's talk about how I assess risk, but I love that you bring up the phrase red flags. I want to touch on how important it is to understand what a red flag actually is. And this is my opinion and version of a red flag. A red flag, some people believe, Spencer, is that it's something that has been raised and they go, oh, I've got to run away from this, right? And nah, that's, I can't invest in this because it's got too many red flags. A red flag, in my opinion, is where you see a risk but don't run away from it. The most important thing is to, all risk is minimized by education. And that's why I started what I do is to minimize people's risk. And to minimize your risk is educate yourself on what those actual red flags are, because, it could just be a problem that is an opportunity in disguise. And so does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah.
And so when it comes to looking at different types of risk, it could be a PBN, right? So sticking to the content site theme, it could be a PBN, and a lot of people raise a red flag of like, all right, this is a risk. So don't just run away. Understand it first, right? A lot of people run away from PBNs. Maybe you could purchase that PBN. That may not be on somebody's actual radar, and maybe you could get some sort of specific agreement that PBN kept linking to the site because it's got a decent amount of traffic. It could even be that if I understood why the traffic is coming from those PBN links, I'll explain what a PBN is after to the audience if they don't already know. But so if that a decent amount of traffic or why they're coming from a PBN to the site that you're looking at buying, understand why and create those articles and get the traffic organically. Because if you understand this risk, then you can either minimize it or just completely remove it and then benefit from it once you do that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I agree. A red flag isn't always a stop sign. Sometimes it's just a warning, or like you said, if you understand the potential risks there a little bit better, there may be a way to mitigate that if you truly understand it.
And so a PBN is, I think most of your audience would know, a private blog network of people that, the sites are just linking into a site that you may be buying.
Right.
Yeah. And there's so many other different types of risks as well. It could be with SEO. There may be, if we stick to what happened last year in 2019 with the changes on the updates from Google, where they had penalized different types of niches, or whether you want to call them industries and health and stuff like that, is understanding all right, why, understand that red flag. And if it did get hit by an update, why did it happen? Is it because they are writing content about a specific thing that may be not within the ethos or values of what Google want to share with people? And if so, can you remove that content? That's kind of how I analyze risk. Is I just want to find out more information about it and keep asking, why has this happened and how can I remedy this?
Right. Yeah, I think that makes absolute sense. I think that's good advice there as well. I wanted to ask you about deal size. You've touched on it a little bit, but Two parts to this question. One, what do you think is a good deal size, right? And maybe explain how you might help clients, determine how large of a site they should be looking at. And then the second part of that question is financing. Do you believe that people should be taking out any type of SBA loan to get a larger deal, et cetera?
They're very good questions, and there's more questions, like they're higher level questions, and to go deep, you'd need to have more questions to go deeper into very specific answers, but we'll keep it broad. The first one is deal size, and that really depends on, what that person's actual goals are. I personally believe that it depends on how much work they want to do, right? Like if they want to buy something and really learn a lot about the business and a lot about the space, then buying something in under the 100K range is great, because you're going to be able to roll up your sleeves and learn a lot, not just in creating content, but SEO, digital marketing, depending on the business type. So that type of deal size, I believe, is good for people that really want to create a foundation that they can use, which is a skill set and a different particular types of skill sets to create a portfolio and build that portfolio themselves. There is the option to buy bigger deals and have experts come in. I still believe it's good to understand how the experts actually work, like SEOs and digital marketers. You don't want to hire somebody that you can't actually check their work because you don't know what's going on. Above 100K, I believe that's good. A good deal size if you want to have something, it is a bit more passive. And normally, in my opinion, if you buy something, over the 100K or over the 500K range, it's less, there's less work because you have more income and you can pull levers and you can have resources. Mm-hmm. And also it's harder to shake, and I've spoken to Dom Wells about this from Onfolio, it's harder to, like we used a tree and a bush analogy. When you've got something that is as big as like $1 million or in between, 100K to $1 million, it can be a tree that's harder to shake and harder to get affected by any weather conditions that may happen. If you buy something sub that, it's easier to get blown over or pushed aside by any conditions that may happen online. So I believe that the higher you go, the risk can be minimized. But then again, there's also, I want to be cautious how I say this, but there's also always risks, and it depends on the business type and model and, all that sort of stuff. So does that help with the deal size, in my opinion, on the best deal size for different folk?
Yeah. No, I think that helps people understand kind of where you're coming from and the kind of approach. I mean, it sounds like you, at least the first two deals that you did were sort of sub 50K-ish, right? And then the last one was a little bigger, or?
Yep. Just a little bigger. Wasn't hugely bigger. And then as I go on, we'll definitely be buying bigger businesses as I join with other partners and stuff like that.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, joining up with other partners. What type of, do you have anything in the works, and what would that look like? You just kind of pulling money and you're going to be the operator, or what sort of deal structure would that look like?
Sure. So I've got a lot of interest. Like I said to you before, you guys have definitely not just gone away and created a business with MotionBest, but you've solved a problem. A lot of people are coming to me with funds, and they either don't have the time to operate a business and run it, or they just don't have the skills.
Right.
And they, they're saying, "Hey, Jaryd, can you just buy me a business and run it?" And it's been happening for quite a while, and I haven't put myself in a position where I'm ready to do that justice for the investors that come on board. I don't want to just start something up that's going to be, half, excuse my language, because as we've all seen in this space, the news that's happened as of recently, that, if it's not done well, then it can affect a lot of people. And that's just not how I'd like to operate. I want to make sure I do it the right way. So in terms of how we're doing it, it will be released throughout this year, and I've already got a short list of people that want to jump on. And yes, we will be buying businesses where we will be operating them, and funds will be distributed, interest on people's investments will be distributed between investors, whether they're shareholders or whatnot. We're still solidifying how we're going to structure the fund, but it's looking towards it maybe a share structure. And then, if we sell it above what we sell, will be, a split between investors and the operators as well. So It'll kind of look like that. It's a pretty exciting process, and it's pretty cool to see how much money is actually out there and how much help is actually out there as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to get dollar signs in my eyes, because I know that when you start adding a lot more value, then a lot more money can come. Although I'm just really excited, and by connecting with some pretty amazing people who are, potential operators and executives and consultants and stuff, because there's some great people where everybody can benefit from the pie if you just get the right people on the bus.
Yep. Yeah, it's a super interesting space. And I guess just to clarify for listeners, you were talking about news. You're referring to Income Store there. People can look that up if they want. Some recent news with Income Store. But you talking about getting investors and there being a lot of money out there. That is absolutely true. There is a lot of people that are very interested in this space and don't have experience in this space per se.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of people that do have a lot of experience in this space and are still looking to put their money somewhere because they're busy with their businesses and they would like to invest more, across the space. I'm pretty familiar with several different groups that have done this, of course, Wired Investors, which they kind of no longer exist. But they're anyways, long story short is Wired Investors. The first deal they did was, they bought Longtail Pro from me for 7 figures, a few years ago, and they bought a number of other deals, but doing something very similar to what you're talking about, right? Using investors, and then they're operating the businesses, and it's a really, really interesting model that I think, if done correctly, can provide both investors and the operators tremendous returns for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Is if done correctly in terms of scalability, like you'd want to set something up the right way so it's like the feedback wheel that a lot of billionaires talk about. Like the more that gets put into it, the stronger it gets, not the weaker it gets.
Right.
So really using that feedback and setting up the right way. And not just if it's set up the right way, but I think a big part of it is by whom as well, and it's hard on the online space to really gain a lot of trust with a lot of people. I think you've got to do your due diligence into who's doing what and why, and what's their actual motivation, and what's their care factor for the people who are actually involved. And I think that's a huge thing, because when things can go belly up, who are the operators going to do what's in their best interest? When and I look at the Income Store thing as well, or is it going to be, the opposite way around? Will the captain go down with the ship, or will they abort it type thing? And that's why I feel it's a really, anybody that's investing into anything is just to understand who you're actually investing with.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, try to be as educated as possible, who, and just understanding the risks in general. I mean, as excited as I am about the online space and building and buying online assets, I'm also extremely aware of the risks involved, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all are. I mean, it is a risky asset class. Google can change their algorithms, and, traffic can disappear overnight. Those things do happen. And so people do need to be aware of risks. And, that's kind of why it's important to talk about red flags, because there's certain ways to mitigate risks. And as long as you understand what all the risks are going into a deal, then, by all means, you can do that. And I think that's, again, where, not to keep bringing up Income Store, but that's kind of where they went wrong, is they really made bigger promises than they could keep, try to make it sound like there wasn't as much risk as there really were with their clients. And that got them in a lot of hot water. So
yeah, if it sounds too good to be true.
Right. You can't guarantee a return. That just is not feasible to do. So
yeah.
No, very good. Sort of the one last question I wanted to ask is, you've mentioned, that you have clients a number of times. Can you kind of explain what is available to people on buyingonlinebusinesses.com? How can people work with you, or what do you offer there?
Yeah. So this was created from the whole teach a man to fish versus give a man a fish, which I'm sure a lot of people know about. I'd much rather teach people to fish so they can eat for the rest of their life rather than give them one meal of one fish.
Yeah.
And that's why this was created, where I want to make sure people can go away, invest, and create their own path. Also, not be lonely in doing so. A lot of people say the entrepreneurial journey is lonely, and I just think that's a stupid myth.
Right.
Which is just so dumb. Like, let's be honest here. It's just so stupid. Why do you have to make it, alone?
Right. There's so many other people, especially in our space. I mean, with so many bloggers and other people doing the same thing, it's really easy to reach out and connect with people.
Yeah, and it can be fun, and you can have great success and do it with a lot of people, and normally that's what that's needed. A lot of good people to have great success. So yeah, how this was created is that a lot of people were coming to me, hey Jaryd, I want to buy a business. And I started to get really good at research and due diligence. And so what I started helping people to do was, like, I used to have a program where I just taught people due diligence. Now what I actually have is a community where people can get, that whole program and course, but they're also connected with a bunch of other people that are in the space, buying sites, selling sites, and scaling them. So the goal is to really help people buy sites and build them up so they can create their own portfolio with minimizing their risk and being around the right people in doing so. So I actually do due diligence reviews for people to make sure they're not going to go away and buy a lemon. So that's kind of like a very valuable thing for people, is they want to buy a site, and a lot of people reaching out is like, can you just check over this sort of stuff for me, Jaryd? And that's a huge value add to people's, where, I've looked at so many deals, I can quickly and easily spot things and say, you've got to check this first. And then, where I like to do is that I don't actually have all the answers. Most people, when it comes to investing and how they feel about the investment, they have the answers. I'm just really good at asking questions. And when I'm a mirror for them, and when we're equipped with a bunch of information through due diligence, that can be very, very powerful. Also mixed with a community of people that have great skills and knowledge in buying and building sites as well. So that's kind of what it is. People can just pay a monthly fee, or they pay an annually fee, and they can become a part of the community and go down that track. Yeah,
awesome. So if people want to follow along with you and or even get in touch with you, they can go over to buyingonlinebusinesses.com. Jaryd, it's been a pleasure having you on the Niche Pursuits podcast. I love it when people have a great journey. I mean, you've gone from being a plumber to now online business portfolio owner, manager, and doing very well. So I appreciate your words of wisdom and coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it, Spencer.
Thank you once again for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. As a reminder, this episode has been sponsored by Ezoic. Ezoic is a Google award-winning technology that everyone from niche website owners to major brands use to grow and monetize their websites. Ezoic is a Google certified publishing partner. It's a platform that leverages artificial intelligence to help you optimize revenue and monetization on a per visitor basis, and so much more. If you want to check out Ezoic, go to nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Again, that's nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Thanks a lot.